Okay, so now that we've been working in Photoshop for a while, let's talk about how we actually save our Photoshop file to both the Photoshop document format and various other formats for different types of distribution. So I'm going to go File, Save As, and you might have done this already, but I'm going to just save our document. So our first doc, and the format is listed as Photoshop, and I'm just going to leave all these as the default settings. It's going to ask me, do I want to maximize compatibility? I'll say that's fine, okay. What this just saved as is a .psd file, a Photoshop document file. Now this is the file that you'll take with you if you were to transfer this to, say, a flash drive, or if you were to send this whole project to someone. Now these files are very, very large. I've had Photoshop document files that are several gigabytes, just one file. So that file can be opened up on any other computer that has Photoshop, and you should be able to access everything that you've done, including the history, any sort of custom stuff that you've imported, layers, any edits you've made. They can go through and make those changes. So this is a really good format for backing up and, of course, working in Photoshop. But it's not so good for sending to other people. There's a few questions such as, do you really want to allow the other person to have access to all of your work? This can be a big problem in, say, a client situation where if you send them the Photoshop file, then they would just have all of the work without, paying you or something like that. It's also not really a widely accepted format because you have to have Photoshop to open it. So there's a few other types of formats we can save this in. We can go File, Save As. And if I change the format option, there's tons of different formats in Photoshop. Now for this class, most commonly we'll be using Jpeg. Jpeg is the standard web-based format that you'll see most pictures from the internet are saved in Jpeg. If I click Save, it's going to ask me the quality I want it to be in. And as I change this, it's going to give me an estimated size. So Jpeg originally, it's widely used on the internet. This is because it can save really small. So I could reduce the quality. Let's say the client, needed the file to be X number of kilobytes. You could save it really small. If they don't care, you could save it really large. These are different quality settings. I click OK, and now it's saved a JPEG file alongside my Photoshop document. Let's go File, Save As, and look at another format. So JPEG is what we're going to mostly be using if we were sending this to somebody else or posting it on the internet. There's also the PNG format. The PNG format is also used on the internet. Now it's not as efficient as the JPEG format, and in fact you won't really use it too much, but it's very useful for web design because it allows you to have transparency. This is something that'll come up later, so whenever we're making transparent files, files that need to be embedded on a website and have transparency, we'll be saving as PNG quite a bit. But for now, you don't need to worry about it. Just keep in mind that JPEG, PNG are the two primary formats. The other format we'll occasionally be saving it as is Tiff. Now Tiff is a really large format that can save layers, so it can have a lot of the data in Photoshop without some of the data in Photoshop that you may not want to send to somebody. It will have all the layer data, but not necessarily, think modifications that you've made. Now this is really useful if you were sending this to a printer or to a client, or somebody needed a really high quality version and they needed it in multiple layers. Tiff is what you would want to use. To talk more about these other formats like JPEG, just to go back there real quick, JPEG can't save layers. What this means, JPEG and PNG are both flattened image formats. Whenever we save something as a JPEG, it flattens out all these layers. So whenever you save to this format, if you open this up again in Photoshop, so I've saved it, I'll just replace my save. If I went File, Open, and opened up my JPEG that I just saved, it's just one layer, right? I've lost the data that I have in my Photoshop document. So this is really important, because if I save this and delete my Photoshop document for some reason, this is a really limited format. Let's save our original document as a TIFF, and I'll show you the difference. So whenever I save this as a TIFF, I have this layers box checked, hit save. I can just hit OK on these, that's fine. Say OK. Let's go File, Open. Open our Tiff. And look, our Tiff actually just replaced our Photoshop document, has the layers, has a lot of the changes that we made. We're good to go. So this Tiff can be useful sending to friends that maybe don't have Photoshop but still need to be able to edit it. Whereas the JPEG is more useful if you're sending it to a client or to, for example, me. If you're submitting an assignment, we'll mostly be submitting in JPEG unless I need to see your different layers. So keep that in mind. You're going to File, Save As to save your Photoshop document. That's like your project file. And then your deliverable format, the format you'll be sending to other people, is JPEG or sometimes PNG, but not so soon in the semester.